first graders, today we are going to read Issun Boshi, the 1-inch man, and my dog is trying to join us. All right, our learning objectives for today are to identify elements of stories and elements of a folktale you heard read aloud, identify similarities and differences in 3 folktales, demonstrate an understanding of the word deeds, and illustrate and describe an event from a folktale in order to compare and contrast folktales. Our key vocabulary are astonished, crammed, deeds, dodging, and permission. Astonished is a verb, and it means surprised, amazed, feeling or showing wonder. Yisbel was astonished to find a pony standing outside of her apartment building. That doesn't happen very often in New York City. Crammed is also a verb, and it means packed into. Marta crammed so many blocks into the container that the lid would not close. And if you look at this picture, you can see there are so many people crammed into that bus. Deeds. Deeds is a noun. Deeds are acts or actions. Simple deeds, such as holding the door for others and saying excuse me, can make someone else's day much better. Dodging. Dodging is a verb, and it means avoiding by moving aside quickly. Chris was an excellent dodgeball player, dodging every throw that came his way. Permission. Permission is a noun, and it means approval to do something. The students asked their teacher for permission to throw an end-of-the-year party. You might ask your parents permission to have a play date or to have a sleepover, right? Okay, let's do a little bit of review. So some of the stories told around the world are quite similar to each other, even though the stories originated in different places around the world. What is a folk tale? Who can tell me what a folk tale is? A folk tale is a story that someone made up long ago and that has been told over and over again. Okay? Which country or land did Thumbelina originate? The story of Thumbelina, where did it originate? The story of Thumbelina originated in Denmark, okay? Remember, Denmark was in Europe. Who are the characters of Thumbelina? Thumbelina, the toads, the field mouse, the mole, the sparrow, and the little king, right? How big is Thumbelina? She's the size of a thumb, right? What adventures does Thumbelina have? She travels downriver on a lily pad after she gets kidnapped by those frogs, right? Or the toads. She lives with a mouse in her home, and she flies away to the warm countries on the back of a swallow. What happens to Thumbelina at the end of the story? She marries the little king, right? So even though Tom Thumb was very small, he was able to help others, right? How was Thumbelina helpful to others? Who did Thumbelina help? She saved the swallow's life by secretly taking care of it each night, right? And this shows us that even a little person can do great and wonderful things. So today, you're going to hear a story that comes from a different land, but whose main character is also tiny. So a third tiny character story. Which of the following characters who you have learned about so far are also tiny? Rhodopus, Tom Thumb, or Thumbelina. Wow, I read that in the wrong order. I'll read it again. Sorry, guys. Which of the following characters who you have learned about are also tiny? Thumbelina, Rhodopus, or Tom Thumb? Thumbelina and Tom Thumb, right? Those are both characters that were the size of our thumb. So today's read aloud originated in a country called Japan many, many years ago. Okay, so this is the continent of Asia. And this over here in red is Japan. Okay. Japan is made up of 4 major islands. See how it's out in the water by itself? Japan is made up of 4 major islands. Today's story took place a long time ago in the biggest of those 4 major islands, Honshu. Issun Boshi means 1-inch boy in Japanese. It is also the name of the main character in our story today. Remember, our key vocabulary are astonished, crammed, deeds, dodging, and permission. Listen carefully to find out how Issun Boshi, 1-inch boy, is similar to and different than Tom Thumb and Thumbelina. Long ago, in a village in Japan, there lived an old man and his wife who, more than anything, wanted a child. They hoped and they wished. They went to the temple and prayed to the gods. "May we be blessed with a child," they said, "even if he is no larger than our thumbs." And then their prayers were answered. In 9 months' time, a fine baby boy was born to the old couple. The child was lovely and very small. They called him Issun Boshi, which means 1-inch boy, for he was no taller than his father's thumb. So, what other characters have thumb in their name? Thumbelina and Tom Thumb, right? And they're all the size of a thumb. Issun Boshi grew up strong, smart, and helpful, though he grew no bigger. When 12 years had passed, Issun Boshi came to his parents and said, "Father and mother, please give me your permission to go to the capital city, for I wish to see the world, learn many things, and make a name for myself." So Issun Boshi is asking his parents for permission to go to the capital city. When you ask for someone's permission, you're asking that person to let you do something, okay? His parents were very worried, scared to think of all the bad things that could happen to Issun Boshi in such a large city. But they knew their boy was smart and strong, so they agreed to let him go. They made for him a tiny sword out of a sewing needle. They gave him a rice bowl for a boat and some chopsticks for oars. So remember, chopsticks are what people in Japan use as a kind of like a fork. So they use it to pick up their food, okay? In the rice bowl, he floated down the river. Oh, hang on. I have a rice bowl and some chopsticks, so I'm going to pause my video so I can grab them and show you. All right, guys. Oh, I'm trying to get this full screen. Here we go. All right. So here is a rice bowl. You see, it's pretty small, right? It's not that big. There's my hand over the rice bowl. Okay. So Issun Boshi had one of these as a boat. So he sat in it and he was going down the river. And then he had these chopsticks. You use them like this. Ooh, I'm struggling here. You see? And you pinch your food and you pick it up and you put it in your mouth. And he had these chopsticks as oars. So he used them to row his little rice bowl boat. Okay? Okay, back to our story. In the rice bowl, he floated down the river, using the chopsticks as paddles when the water became rough, and using his sword to catch fish. In a few days, he arrived at the city of Kyoto. Long ago, Kyoto was the capital for the government center for Japan. Today, the capital is Tokyo. My, what a busy city this is, he thought. So many people crammed in, or packed into, one space. He walked carefully through the streets, dodging or avoiding feet and cartwheels. He kept walking cartwheels, like wheels on carts, not people doing cartwheels. I said that kind of funny. He kept walking until he came to a beautiful house, a beautiful house in the largest city. At the foot of the steps sat a pair of shiny black geta or wooden shoes. They belonged to the owner of the house, who was the wealthiest lord in the city. The door of the great house opened. Out walked a man who put on the shiny black shoes. Issun Boshi called out, "Hello! Hello there!" The man looked around and seeing no one began to go back in. But Issun Boshi cried out, "Down here! I'm down here! Near your shoes! Please be careful you don't step on me!" The man who was the lord of the house leaned down and was astonished when he saw Issun Boshi. So the lord was surprised to see someone as small as Issun Boshi. Okay. Issun Boshi bowed and politely introduced himself. "My name," he said, "is Issun Boshi. I have just arrived in the city and I would like to work for you." The lord picked up Issun Boshi in the palm of his hand. In a friendly voice, he asked, "But what can a little fellow like you do?" A fly was buzzing around and bothering the lord, so Issun Boshi drew out his sewing needle sword. With a quick swat, away the fly went. How does Issun Boshi help the lord? What has he done to help the lord? He got rid of the fly, right? "You are quite an amazing little fellow," laughed the lord. "Come on in. You may work for me and live in my house." And so tiny Issun Boshi went to live in the big, beautiful house, serving the noble lord. He made friends with everyone there, especially the princess, the lord's lovely daughter. It seemed that he was always at her side, helping her in whatever way he could, whether by holding down the paper when she wrote a letter, or simply by riding on her shoulder and keeping her company while she walked through the beautiful gardens around the house. In time, the princess came to feel a strong affection for her little helper. All right, let's pause here and we are going to talk about the characters. What characters have we met so far? Issun Boshi, his parents, the Lord, and the princess, right? So I want you to describe Issun Boshi's journey to Kyoto. How did he get there? What did he use as a boat? A rice bowl, right? And what did he use to help him move along in the rice bowl? Chopsticks, okay? All right. How does Issun Boshi help the princess? He keeps her company and he holds down her paper while she writes letters, right? Yeah. In the spring, Issun Boshi traveled with the princess and her companions to the Cherry Blossom Festival. On the way home, they began to hear strange noises behind them on the narrow road. They could see nothing in the shadows when suddenly a huge monster leaped into their path. Uh-oh. Everyone screamed and ran except Issun Boshi and the princess. "Who are you and what do you want?" cried Issun Boshi. "I am Oni," growled the monster. And the Oni were terrible creatures who bothered the townspeople. But Issun Boshi stepped forward and shouted, "Get out of the way, you demon! I am here to guard the princess. Step back." Okay, so even though Issun Boshi is a small person, he stands up to the Oni. What would you do if you were Issun Boshi? Would you have stood up to the monster? I don't think I would. I think I would be too afraid. "Ha! We'll see about that," growled the Oni. Then he snatched up Issun Boshi, popped him into his mouth, and whoop, swallowed him whole. Down, down, Issun Boshi slid until he landed plop in the Oni's stomach. "This Oni should be more careful about what he eats," said Issun Boshi. He pulled out his sewing needle sword and began to tickle the Oni's stomach. "Oh! Ooh! Arg!" shouted the Oni. Then he gave a loud burp and out popped Issun Boshi. The Oni ran away, burping the whole way. So how did Issun Boshi defeat the Oni? He was scraping his sewing needle sword on the on the monster's stomach. That wouldn't have felt good. Can you imagine somebody in there with a sewing needle poking your belly? Oh, ow. Okay. Next page. Issun Boshi ran over to the princess. She was bending down and picking something up from the ground. With great excitement, she said, "Look, Issun Boshi, the Oni was so scared he dropped his magic hammer. If you make a wish on it, it will come true." Issun Boshi bowed to the princess and said, "My lady, I would ask that you make that wish." "No, Issun Boshi," said the princess. "You won this because of your bravery. You should be the first one to wish on it." What do you think Issun Boshi is going to wish for? Let's see if you're right. So Issun Boshi took the hammer and said, "I already have my greatest wish, which is to serve you. But if I could have another wish, I would wish to be taller." Then he gave the hammer to the princess, who made a silent wish on it herself. What do you think the princess wished for? Let's see. Then and there, Issun Boshi began to grow taller. That night, when the princess told her father how brave Issun Boshi had been and how he had risked his life to save her, the Lord was so happy that he gave Issun Boshi permission to marry the princess. And so, you see, the princess's wish came true too. Issun Boshi's brave deeds or actions were celebrated throughout the land. He and the princess lived happily together along with Issun Boshi's proud and happy parents, whom Issun Boshi had brought to the Lord's house to be part of his new family. All right, that was the end of our story. This is a great place for you to get up and take a wiggle break and then come back for our comprehension questions. Oopsie. There we go. All righty. So what did the old man and the old woman wish for in the beginning of this folktale? What did they wish for? They wished for a child, right? In which other folktales did people wish for children? Tom Thumb and Thumbelina, right? What is the setting of this story? Remember, setting is where and when our story takes place. The setting of this story is in the village, at the big house, and at the Cherry Blossom Festival, right? For whom